Hello anybody who's watching this, and welcome. I'm much more sad now in comparison to the last video because last video was fun and I noticed that this one is last moments and the next one also is last moments. Which means they're both gonna be more sad than, what was it, Tales from the Bottle? Anyway, welcome to my reaction to what happens when a submarine sinks. Last moments. A lot of things gonna happen. People gonna die. And I won't be able to make fun in the video and I'm gonna be sad. But what's a little bit fun, or just good, is that this video is recommended by Tom Vinton, and he recommended by using my donation link in the description below, which you can do as well, and I will say your name. And I thought of different things if I already made the reactions, or just if multiple people recommend me the same thing. Multiple ways to shout out multiple people if in the video itself I'm not able to do so. But anyway, let's just start. Let's get it over with. Thresher.
For many people, being in a submarine is a pretty frightening prospect, and
Why
you
is
can
he blue?
understand why. There's a lot of very common phobias that could potentially be at play, claustrophobia being the most obvious. Yeah. A lot of the spaces in a submarine are pretty restricted to play. Claustrophobia.
That guy on the bottom reminded me of Justin Timberlake. I don't know why. While to my head, his face is not as long and what's the opposite of wide? His face is a little bit more wide than Justin. Anyway, sorry.
Obvious. A lot of the spaces in a submarine are pretty restrictive, and they're all enclosed in what is essentially a big capsule that you literally cannot escape. Once you get in, you're not coming out until you resurface. And maybe you're not afraid of enclosed spaces, but you're afraid of open spaces. And well, it doesn't get any more open than the ocean. I don't suffer from this personally, but even I feel a little uneasy looking at these pictures of
I forgot to refresh the page. Whatever.
There's nothing above you, nothing around you, nothing under you. You're just floating in a massive void. I imagine being submerged in a submarine is a little like an experience I had as a kid in the Album Cave in the west of Ireland. You're just surrounded by tons of rock, and the further you get from the entrance, the deeper you get into the cave, you start to feel a little uncomfortable. You're traveling through a tiny crack between these.
That actually probably happens because the air gets a little bit thinner. So your brain starts to not really malfunction, but it starts not working on the 100% capacity.
Giant masses that could easily crush you quickly or slowly, and there's nothing you or anybody else could do about it. And of course, water is much the same. As soon as you enter the water, there's force being applied all over you. And the deeper you get, the more pressure you'll be subjected to. Eventually, the water will crush you as easily as the rocks in the cave would. Submarines have to be built with water pressure in mind. Now with submarines, we have reached the deepest depths of the ocean, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, but only specially made research submarines can go down that far. Every other submarine has a limit. The Challenger Deep is about 10 kilometers deep. Military attack submarines, which is what we'll be looking at today, have a test depth of only about half a kilometer. The exact depths are classified, but they're around that. Even if we're generous and double that, it's still not very far. Now the test depth is just the depth that the submarine can safely operate at. They can go even deeper, but they're in dangerous territory. The maximum depth you can bring these submarines to and still have a chance to bring it back up is generally about double the test depth. So that is still not even close to the bottom. During the Cold War, numerous nuclear submarines sank. Today we're going to be looking at the first nuclear submarine to be lost at sea, the USS Thresher. Commissioned in 1961, the USS Thresher was a nuclear-powered fast attack submarine in service with the United States Navy. Being the lead ship of its class, the Thresher spent a large amount of time in trials, testing, and training. In 1962, the submarine entered a scheduled assessment period where engineers would examine the onboard systems and make repairs and modifications. This work went on for 9 months. With the work done, in April 1963, the USS Thresher set off to perform post-overhaul diving trials off Cape Cod, Massachusetts. The submarine was accompanied by a submarine rescue ship, the Skylark, which would monitor the trials and maintain contact as the Thresher dove down below it. The submarine first made a shallow dive and resurfaced before performing a test dive to half the test depth, around 150 meters, where she remained overnight. At 6:30 a.m. on the 10th of April, the USS Thresher re-established communications with the Skylark. About an hour later, they began the dive to full test depth, 300 meters, which was dozens of meters beyond Skylark's rescue capabilities. Thresher began slowly circling further below Skylark with intermittent pauses to check that all systems were okay. At about 9 a.m., Thresher was just about at the test depth when they contacted the Skylark to say they were having minor difficulties and would attempt to resurface. The Skylark asked if everything was under control, to which they received no response. 2 minutes later, the Skylark picked up a garbled transmission which was barely intelligible except for the phrase exceeding test depth. This was shortly followed by a sudden low-frequency sound, and the Thresher was never heard from again.
Maybe that wasn't when it said exceeding the test depth or something like that. I have forgotten it immediately, but when they said that, I thought they went deeper to test it, but maybe just there was a message that they are losing ability to go up. They just start to sink, maybe.
So what happened on board the Thresher? The Thresher was commanded by Lieutenant Commander John Wesley Harvey. During the descent to the full test depth of 300 meters, Commander Harvey and his crew were inspecting the ship for any possible malfunctions and found none. They continued the pattern of diving 30 meters, checking all the systems and relaying information to the Skylark until they reached the test depth, at which point a malfunction caused the nuclear reactors powering the sub to shut down and they lost propulsion. The exact cause of the malfunction is disputed. At this point, the Thresher begins to sink tail first. Commander Harvey reports the following status to the Skylark. We are experiencing minor difficulty, have positive up angle, attempting to blow. Harvey was referring to blowing the ballast tanks of the sub. A ballast tank is a compartment in a submarine which holds water. The tank can be flooded or blown to control buoyancy of the ship. Typically, submarines only use these near the surface to emerge or submerge. Otherwise, they use hydroplanes and propulsion to control whether they go up or down. Blowing the ballast tanks at any great depth can cause a submarine to shoot up to the surface uncontrollably. However, given the emergency circumstances, Commander Harvey ordered to blow the ballast tanks to avoid sinking any further. The Skylark acknowledges this decision and informs the Thresher that there are no ships in the area to fear collision with. However, as the high-pressure air travelled through the valve blowing the water from the ballast, there was a build-up of ice blocking the flow of air. Realizing the ship is still sinking, Commander Harvey orders another attempt at blowing the ballasts, but this too fails. Commander Harvey sends one last transmission, informing the Skylark the submarine is sinking below the maximum test depth of 300 meters.
So that's the message that was...
The Skylark continues to contact Thresher. The submarine implodes somewhere between 400 and 600 meters, killing all 129 personnel on board.
Oh god, that's so many.
What is it like to be on a submarine when it implodes? Well, it's hard to know for definite, as obviously no one has ever had the experience and lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, this
Before the implosion, the crew would have known what was about to happen as they were sinking. The ship probably would have begun to groan and creak as the hull fittings started to weaken.
Yeah.
I imagine it's a pretty terrifying sound. But the implosion itself is instant. The Thresher was torn apart. Pieces of it lay scattered across the ocean floor. Once the hull is ruptured, the pressure inside the sub increases massively. The air is compressed so quickly that it's like being inside a diesel engine cylinder. The air becomes hot enough to ignite. There's a shockwave that's like an explosion. If you were subjected to this, you'd be destroyed. If you were somehow shielded from this shockwave, of course the pressure would instantly crush the cavities in your body. For example, your lungs would collapse. Then, of course, there is the matter of the ship itself flying around you. If any of that hits you, it's going to do a lot of damage, and also the tons of water that would crash into you from all sides.
Rather be crashed.
Basically, you are killed several times
drowned.
over in very extreme conditions. It sounds very grisly, but the good news is this all apparently happens faster than the human brain can perceive, so you'd be dead before you knew it was happening.
That's
Of
good.
course, the crew would have still had to deal with the
Again, this is
impending
better
dread
than
of
drowning.
slowly sinking to their doom. After the loss of the USS Thresher, the Navy implemented a more rigorous program of design review and safety inspections called SubSafe. Since its inception, only one other submarine, the USS Scorpion, has suffered the same fate. As is custom for a ship lost at sea, the USS Thresher was never decommissioned by the US Navy and remains on eternal patrol. I'll end this video, which is the inaugural video of this new series, with 2 questions. Did you enjoy this video? I know it's a bit of a departure from the usual tone of my other series, but I think variety is a healthy thing to have to keep the content fresh and interesting.
Sure.
And my second question, born of morbid curiosity, do you think it is possible that anyone on the USS Thresher was not killed instantly, rather they would have been aware of the implosion, even if just for a second? Could there have been any part of the ship that would have somehow shielded them from the worst of the damage, that they would have heard the horrifying sound of the ship being destroyed and felt themselves being crushed? Personally, I don't think that would have been possible. I think, and well, I hope it would have instantly killed everyone no matter what. But I'm obviously not an expert, and I'd like to hear what you guys think. It's just an unsettling thought that has been in my mind all throughout the creation of this video. And now I must bid thee farewell.
Okay. Death in Space, the one I just watched. I don't know how the thumbnail looked like, but yeah. Thank you, Tom, for this. And for the next one again, another last moment. I guess this is the first last moment video he released, and people were interested enough that he continued the series, which I partially wish he didn't. Oh, that's actually the next video, losing power at the seabed. On the seabed. So, yeah, this is terrifying. Like, I'm not afraid of oceans, but because of situations like this, I can't help to feel uneasy. I've never been on the ocean, I've never been on the sea. I've been on the river, and those are not deep. You can drown, but yeah, you're also much easier to be saved from that. Can I call whatever goes through my town a river? Because it's filled with trash now. Not literal trash, but like just shit and probably chemicals. Anyway, can't wait for summer and go swim in it again. That is actually true. But anyway, 129 people. Jesus Christ. For some reason, when I think of Submarine, I don't think that it can hold easily 129 people. Like, I know that there are big submarines, but still, 120, Jesus Christ. Alright, thank you again, Tom, and thank you anybody else who watched this, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye. Have a great life, because one of us has to.